I'm going to introduce Shari Barclay, our keynote. And one of the things, Shari and I have known each other for a long time, but I'm sort of sorry I didn't get to work here during her day because it was really fascinating when I interviewed her to hear about all the things that they were doing, and it was really booming back then. So I'm really glad Shari could be here. She was here for 25 years total, right? And how many as coordinator? It was
16.
It was like 89 to 2006.
I don't remember the dates, but about 16 years as coordinator.
Yeah. All right, Shari. Just be sure you're in sort of where the owl can see you.
Okay, can I set my stuff down on here?
Yes. Jenny's on there, so just don't. She's on there somewhere. You're good though.
I don't want to look.
You're fine.
I want to see the people. And I want to see everybody. So, okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I appreciate you guys all coming out for the 52nd anniversary of the Delta Montrose Practical Nursing Program. And today is bittersweet for me, as you guys can imagine. We want to acknowledge all the wonderful nurses that we've taught and trained, and also to say goodbye to the program, which is really hard after being a big part of this place for so long. As you know, my name is Shari Barclay. I've had the pleasure of being part of this nursing program for about 22 years. I taught as an instructor for 6 years, roughly, and then I became the health program coordinator, basically nursing coordinator, for about 16 years. I had the privilege of working with an amazing group of instructors who were committed to training, caring, competent nurses, as are here. Okay, our goal was to train them so well that we would welcome them to come and care for our families. Some of you know that I said that many times in class. You know, it's a tough program. You're here by choice. If you don't want to be here, don't let it hit you in the bum as you leave. I think most of you who were my students remember that statement. But I also would say, you're not going to get out of this program unless I can look at the door of my hospital room and see you walk in, take care of me or my family. And I can honestly say, those who graduated are always welcome to take care of me and my family. When I retired, that actually happened. And my mom was in the hospital. She had cancer. I was in the hospital. I had 2 hip replacements. And the majority of the nurses that cared for me were my graduates. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing. And one of my hip surgeries, I kind of bottomed out. And I remember one of my students, ex-students, who's now an RN, immediately put me in bed, put my feet up, turned up the IV, and everything was fine. And so I was very glad that I had that model. Another thing that happened was during one of those hip surgeries, one of my students is a nurse anesthetist, and she gave me anesthesia for my first hip surgery. So you can believe when you looked up and said, I guess maybe I was right about making that happen. I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the philosophy of the program. I'm not going to go over the history. Kathy has done a wonderful job about that. We're grateful that the school district stepped up at the time, the health facilities, the community, the service clubs all supported our program. It was developed because we needed practical nurses on the Western Slope, especially in Delta and Montrose. And originally, most of the practical nurses worked in the nursing homes, and they were desperate for help, and they wanted to homegrown their own nurses, and they did. And the nursing homes supported us with scholarships and with clinical and the Kiwanis. All of our community members supported us. Okay, we were called the Delta Montrose Area Vocational Technical School, which was a mouthful, and we were one of 3 area vocational schools in the entire state. When we started, our department was small. In fact, the first class that I stepped in on, I think there were only 8 or 9 students at that time. And it was just 2 instructors. And then as it grew, we were able to admit 21. When we had the part-time program, we were even up to able to get up to like 32 because we had 2 different levels going. Had a hard time writing the speech because I don't want to bore you, but what I really wanted to say is that one of the most unique qualities of the program was its accessibility. It comes with a program that may not have been college bound. Many of you tried to get into Mesa or CMU as it's called now, and other colleges, and you were limited by academics sometimes, limited by financial situations. Maybe you weren't a 4.0 student your entire high school career. That didn't mean you weren't going to be a good nurse. And so our philosophy was accessibility to everybody who could possibly succeed. So what we did is our initial qualifications were you had to read and do math at a 10.9 grade level. So that's not even high school grad level. And as we felt the textbooks and the complexity of the program, that was the bare minimum. Of course, we wanted you to read it and write at higher level, but there's still some people out there who were very successful, who barely hit that 10.9. And the other thing we said is take our test, and if you don't get 10.9, let's help you. Let's get some tutoring. Let's let you take it again. So our philosophy was we wanted you to come in if you could reasonably be successful. And that was our level was 10.9. And so we would, as soon as you hit that 10.9, many of you know, you're on the list, right? And when we admitted our next class, we went down that list and said, okay, the first 18, 20 people, that you have a spot. And if somebody said, well, I've made other plans or I can't do it right now, could you leave me on the list and roll me over? Sure. And then we'd start calling the next ones down. So students didn't have to worry about, well, I'm on a list, but I have to get points for this, a point for that, you know. And in college, I'm not knocking the colleges, but we were vocational. And that was the group that we wanted to serve. And as a result, we were able to get students in who may not have been straight A students, but those were the nurses that were taking care of me and my mom, and I was happy to have them because they were going to be good nurses. Let's see, I kind of ad-libbed a little bit, but that's okay. Our program offered intense clinical instruction, and that was one of the things that we were well known for in this area. The hospitals, the nursing homes, we had students in the clinical almost as much as we had them in the classroom. We had 60 plus credit hours in our programs. You know, Kathy mentioned the number of hours. Those of you who were in my term, we rode you hard, right? You were here and you worked hard. But our students rarely had a problem finding a job when they got out. They were sought after. While I was the instructor and the coordinator, we had 100% pass rate for our graduates on the state board exam. And several years when the state board would tell us, and you will see in some of the articles, we had students like for 3 or 4 years running that got like 100% on the state board exam. And that was pretty awesome for our students. But more important than the graduations statistics, which they are important, so we got funding, students wanted to know that they were going to be prepared to go out, was that we strove for quality. And I think most students would say that they felt that they got a quality education at the program that we presented. From the moment I began teaching in this program with my friend and mentor, Claudia Reel, and I don't know if anybody here remembers Claudia, we were the dynamic duo for a while, and then it was Judy and I after Claudia retired. But our focus was always on the students and the fact that we wanted to make them competent and caring to take care of patients. And that was the end goal. We had students over a broad spectrum. We had young students, we had older students. We had students fresh out of high school who were right in the groove of learning, and we had grandmothers who hadn't opened a textbook in years and who were scared to death because they hadn't opened a textbook in years. But they were going to be good nurses, and they are. good nurses. We had confident young adults who were ready and willing to go and be nurses. And then we had the more insecure older people but they brought such life experience to nursing that superseded just the academics. And so our challenge was to reach them all, to stimulate and get the young people excited and help them, and to nurture the older students, the ones who needed a little more help. And Phyllis's reference to Mama Duck, that was pretty much it. We were sometimes criticized because they said we coddled some of our students, but we didn't coddle them. We told you what we wanted, and we helped you get there. And if you needed a little extra time to get there or a little extra help, Judy, myself, Claudia, I hope you all felt that we were always there to help and get you there. It was a daunting task, and it was an exhilarating one. It was a ride. It was quite the ride. But we never forgot that we were a vocational model, not a collegiate model, that we were here to work with the everyday young lady or young man, old lady or old man who wanted to go out and help and be a nurse. Okay? As many of you will say, it was 10 months of pure, unadulterated hard work. You were there all the time. We were often told we were cramming 2 years of schooling into 10 months, and I believe that we did that. As time went on, as Kathy said, the state board demanded, and so did the accrediting agencies, that we bring down our credit numbers and had to be more innovative in how we got the information out to students. But as time went on, there were other ways for students to get that information that weren't available when I taught. We didn't have the internet. What it was not what we could use now. We didn't have online learning. It was all pretty much didactic, talking to you, or going in the lab, showing you and practicing. Not to say it was better then than it is now, it's just different. And so the school changed as the technology changed. I do remember distinctly our little handwritten care plans, 30-page handwritten care plans that you guys hated, and we didn't like to grade them either. And I remember when computers first started coming out, in like the first year or two, you can't use a computer. No, you got to write it down. I look back now and say, really sure? But that's true. It's an evolution. But our students learned, and you spent many sleepless nights as we did reading them. We taught you, and we hope that we nurtured you as well. As I've reached the age of maturity, I feel I can reminisce a little bit, okay, about the good old days, okay? In the beginning of my years, we were pretty much old school nurses. And you can look at the pictures and know that we were old school nurses. We were intolerant of tardiness or absenteeism. Those of you who had us know that. Spelling, Judy, where's Judy? Spelling, if you spelled it wrong, the answer was wrong, right? And would you have to do it 10 times to get your point back? We required the detailed nursing care plans, but truly we felt that was how you learned it. You couldn't just get it reading out of the book, you needed to process it. And that was why we did that. Students had to go to the hospital or nursing home the night before. Remember those nights, right? And then you spent hours the night before getting prepared for preclinical, right? And your heart rate just went up, didn't it? You think about the preclinical, right? You had to come in and you had to answer questions, and you had to prepare and tell us what you were going to do with your patient that day. And if you weren't prepared, which didn't happen very often, usually only happened once in each clinical because you went home. We sent you home. And it sounded cruel, but you didn't come unprepared again, and you learned. So we were pretty old school and pretty mean at that time, I would say. But hopefully you learned. We had a capping ceremony, and I don't know that they've had it the last couple of years, but capping was the acknowledgement that you had finished the academics basic academics necessary to go out and to take care of real patients. Also that you had the clinical skills, the lab skills, and how many hours did you spend in lab practicing on mannequins? And this was before the simulation mannequins. This was those old mannequins that the arms would fall off right when you moved them from one place to the other. It did happen, and we had some old mannequins, and they had some very strange orifices that we took advantage of, right? But then when you got to the hospital, then you had more competency. And tapping was the acknowledgement that you'd made it to that level. And it was a pretty exciting time when the nurses got their caps. We also required white uniforms. Okay, we have white uniforms for clinical, white uniforms, capping and graduation. And you guys complained all the time. Eventually you won, but not while I was around, you didn't win. And some of the reasoning was, again, some of it's old school, but patients identified with a white uniform and a nurse and someone professional. And the students lived up to that when they were in their white. Your persona sort of changed when you were in uniform. And you made the patients feel comfortable. I remember days in the classroom and after school tutoring. I remember students coming in, and I was talking to one just a bit ago, the math phobic students. You know, they were freaking out that they couldn't do math. And my t-shirt, remember my t-shirt? Math is fun. And I walked in to teach math, and the students who were phobic would just groan. But I would tell, you know, we took the magic out of math. And students who swore they were going to not pass because of math come to me today and say, thank you. I mean, it wasn't magic anymore. And so I remember that fondly because I enjoyed teaching math, and I enjoyed seeing that new light bulb go off in their head when they said, oh, that's all there is to it? And who remembers God says, right? In math, they had to memorize the conversions for math. And those of you who aren't nurses is, you know, how many milligrams in a gram. We had a little list, and I labeled it irreverently, God says. And the reason I did that, I said, because this is a known. God says this is how it is. And that was one way to trigger the memory of that. Students can't forget Judy's anatomy class, right? Okay. Judy's anatomy, most darn cranial nerves and all the muscles that she asked you to remember. Jeannie, who's quietly guided you in the clinical or in the lab procedures. And she very gently but persistently got you guys to do what you needed to do. Janice, anybody remember Janice? Dancing in front of the classroom, trying to get a point across to make the class pay attention and to remember something. So we did have fun as well as learn a lot of stuff. And that's pretty much of the reminiscing part. And that's part of it why it's so bittersweet, because I do miss that. And I miss it. Miss the students, and I miss all the joy that I got from teaching them. Briefly, Kathy had referred to a couple of things that we did that were important during my tenure there. And I just wanted to touch on those briefly. We were a small program in a small rural area, but we were able to make some big changes, even on the state level. I was honored to be able to be on the State Board of Nursing for 3 years. And that was quite a lot of work, but it was very eye-opening. I was able to help facilitate some policy changes that helped the rural community. I initiated the part-time track. Some of you took the part-time track because the class was so intense that even the best of students sometimes had trouble completing it in 10 months. They had family, they still tried to work because nobody was giving them groceries. They had to provide, especially the single moms. So we initiated the two-year track so that students could come part-time and do the academics in 1 year and then do the clinical the following year. And it was a tremendous boon to the program. We were able to admit more students because sometimes we had a 2-year waiting list of students who qualified, and we had so many less people have to drop out. It was heartbreaking to lose students from the full-time track who you knew could do it, but their life circumstances was what it was holding them back. So that was an important thing that we had instituted. And then when they discontinued it because of financial aid and other reasons, we brought the on-campus associate degree program. At that time, Mesa didn't have, Mesa CMU didn't have an associate degree program on the Western Slope. They had stopped theirs. And many of our students came into the LPN program because they wanted to go on and be RNs. And this was the only way they could make that happen financially and academically. So we brokered a deal with Trinidad State Junior College, and they brought over their associate degree program over telecommunications. It was an Optel system. And it was in that old metal building in back, small class. The communications were awful.
It was
It was
horrible.
awful.
Absolutely.
It was horrible, but it was better than not having the program.
Yes, it
And we
was.
fought with it. We did, and nowadays it wouldn't be a problem at all with Zoom and all the other things that happen. But it was the beginning of the telecommunications, and it would cut out. But those
Little
students,
black box we
little black
listened to
box,
for
right.
5 hours a day.
and it was horrible. But they did it, and they did well, and they graduated, and it was an excellent program. We had 2 years of that, I believe, and then Mesa, because of the district, Mesa had to give us permission to bring in another program because they weren't offering it. And then after 2 years, Mesa brought back their associate degree, and then Trinidad gracefully moved out. The Colorado Nursing Articulation Law. This was a nationwide, it was the first one in the nation that was accepted. This model happened, it took months of collaboration with the LPN, BSN, ADN coordinators all over the state. We would go to Denver once a month and try to convince the baccalaureate level people that we taught a good solid program at the LPN level so that the students didn't have to repeat classes. What was happening before the articulation model is it depended on what school you wanted to go. You got your LPN, you call another school and they say, oh, that's real nice, honey, but you have to still start taking our nursing 101. And you'd say, but I graduated, I know how to do all the skills of nursing 101. So the articulation model, all of the coordinators sat in rooms for hours and hours. And we went over each bit of curriculum and said, look, we may call it this, but it's the same content as your level. So why can't our students just skip that class and move on? And after months and months of negotiation, that agreement was approved by every single school in the state. So if you went to the next level, they admitted you, they didn't make a test, but they held your credits for those classes, what they called an escrow. And if you completed the next higher level of nursing that proved you understood what we said you understood, then they gave you those credits. And that was amazing for so many people. And many other states used our articulation model as a model for themselves. So that was one of the biggest things that this school was part of and very proud of. In 1990-91, we were approached by Dr. Canfield. Some of you may know Dr. Canfield from Montrose. He's part of the Army National Guard. And Lynn Rule, who passed away, came to the district, talked to Laddie Livingston, our superintendent, said, you know, the Desert Storm's going on. We need to get some LPNs trained to send them on over there. And so we need you to get it together for us. So Laddie came and talked to me and said, Shari, you know, in a couple of months, we'd like to start a new program here and you're going to put it together. And it was like, okay. And so we did. We took our curriculum, we duplicated it, we hired a couple other instructors. They sent the students, those students were not on our list, those were specific for the National Guard. And one of the things was we'd have a special program for them so they didn't kick out students who'd been waiting on our waiting list. And we put on that program just for those National Guard men and women, and were able to graduate them so that they could go out and help with Desert Storm and other skirmishes that occurred after that. And then the last thing that we did for that was pretty significant was bringing our program to Grand Junction. I was approached by people from Mesa College at that time, and they wanted it at the Western Colorado campus. And they said that, you know, they wanted a practical nursing program up there. We were getting a lot of students who would drive down, but they wanted one up there. And so John Jones was our administrator at the time. He said, sure, let's make this happen. And we did. We duplicated our program. Cindy was the on-site teacher coordinator up there. Some of the classes were taught over the Optel, which was a little bit better than it was when you, it had improved some. Instead of looking at a little black box and talking to a speaker like the associate degrees did, they actually had a camera and a television set. So the lectures that we did down here, just pure lecture, was beamed up there. Cindy was on site to answer questions, administer tests, and that sort of thing. And also we set up a lab up there. Cindy did the lab work up there with the students and the clinicals. And we did that for a couple of years. And then Mesa College, which is now CMU, decided that they were going to do it themselves as well. And so we pulled out and they continue to do a practical nursing program up there. Others after me continued to improve the program. They brought their unique talents and changes while they had their tenure. There's Jody, did an excellent job. There's Bertie, who did an excellent job, and Kathy too, who did a wonderful job. The curriculum changed, and the methodology changed. They brought in simulation. They had a lot of online. COVID shook the place up and required a lot of changes. But underneath it all, the main goal always was that we can produce a good quality practical nursing practical nurse who could go on to be a registered nurse and who would take care of their community. Finally, I've got one or two more things to say and then I'll close. I can't but recognize the tremendous community support that we received. The hospitals, the nursing homes, the service clubs continually offered guidance. They were parts of our advisory board. They made financial support so available. So many students got scholarships. They wouldn't have been able to complete the program without a scholarship. Horizons Foundation gave a tremendous scholarship that was a perpetual scholarship. Kiwanis, Rotary, PEO Sisterhood, I can not even remember all of them, supported our program. The local people valued you. And to this day, people will say it, that a practical nursing student from this school was top notch. And I believe that. I didn't accomplish, I'm standing up here rattling on and on, but I didn't accomplish any of this on my own. I really have to say I had an exceptional team of nursing educators. They were amazing. They worked tirelessly to make our program exceptional. I can't attempt to name them all. I've dropped a few names, but there are many more that were part of this program. They're our accomplishments, not my accomplishments. There's no way I could have done this without having a staff that just gave their all and then 10% more. We were colleagues and we were friends. We took care of each other and we took care of our students. We always had each other's back. We're proud of each other and we're proud of our graduates. Thank you for this opportunity to reminisce, and I fondly remember the highlights, and I unfortunately have forgotten some as well. But the satisfaction I have in the job well done with my colleagues and the pride I have in every single graduate that I've had the honor of teaching, that's my legacy. And I thank you all for being here. and for listening, and for making me proud. Thank you.